Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. In today's fun classic model kit review video, we're going to be looking at the Arii, or Otaki, Mitsubishi J2M3 jack. This is Arii kit number A326-800. This kit was originally released in 1973, so it is over 50 years old at this point. When this kit debuted, it was state-of-the-art. And in this review, we'll talk about whether this kit is still relevant in today's world or if it's a relic of a bygone era and best left on the shelf. In this review, we'll be looking at pictures of the in-process kit. We'll talk about the fit and clarity of the clear parts that are included. We'll look at the fit of the major parts of this kit, as well as the surface detailing on the exterior of the kit. We'll also talk about any problem areas to watch out for. And there are quite a few small problem areas to watch out for on this kit, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned for those. Next up, we'll talk about the marking options included with this kit, as well as the decals themselves and the quality of those. We'll also talk about the detailing on the smaller parts of the kit, like the interior parts and the landing gear, etc. Looking at the instructions, in steps 1 and 2, we are assembling the cockpit interior. There's a pilot figure that's included with this kit, but the molding of the pilot figure is honestly quite soft and blobby. In this picture, you can see that I've detail painted the instrument panel. I think that turned out nicely for as simple as that is. Here we can see the pilot seat attached to the rear bulkhead, as well as the control column. I honestly had several issues with these steps of construction. The first of which is that there was no hole drilled in the floor for the control column. I had to drill that out. That really wasn't a big issue. The second thing I had to deal with was there was a large ejector pin mark on the horizontal section of the pilot seat. Since it was in a location that was recessed and very hard to deal with, I cut a piece of plastic sheet to match the base of the seat, and I just glued that in on top of the ejector pin. So now it's a perfectly flat surface where the seat belts are lying. The next issue with the seat was that it was not centered on the rear bulkhead, and I had to cut the tab on the underside of the seat in order to center it on the rear bulkhead. My final issue on the interior was with the armored glass. You can see in this photo there are some molding glitches, so this part needs to be completely sanded out and polished out prior to installation. In step 3, we're mounting the cockpit assembly into the right fuselage half. Setting these parts together, I don't anticipate any problems with this step of construction. In step 4, we're closing up the fuselage halves around the interior, and we're adding the engine firewall. Setting the parts together, it looks like we should be able to get a good seam all the way around the fuselage. In steps 5 and 6, we are building the wing assembly, and then we're attaching the wings and the tailplanes to the fuselage assembly. I deviated in this step of construction by gluing the upper wing halves to the fuselage halves first. This allowed me to dry fit these and get a filler-free seam around the wing root. I was also able to dry fit the tail planes and get a filler-free seam around those where they attach to the fuselage. Setting everything together, it looks like we'll also be able to get a very good wing to fuselage join on the underside of the wing. And the upper wing halves fit very nicely to the lower wing halves when held together. In step 7, we're adding the final bits to the cockpit, and then we're adding the cockpit transparencies over those. Looking at the clear parts, there are several molding glitches that need to be polished out on the canopy of the aircraft. Additionally, I have spent some time dry fitting these parts and tweaking the fit of these to get a really nice fit to the fuselage. I'm not 100% happy with that fit yet, and I'll continue to work on these parts. In steps 8 and 9, we're assembling the landing gear, and then we are mounting the gear and the gear doors to the underside of the fuselage. The detailing on these parts is basic but decent. Looking at the wheels themselves, on the back side of the wheels there are some sink marks. I'm hoping that the gear doors will cover these sink marks. Looking at the gear doors themselves, there are some ejector pin marks on the insides of those as well, but I'm hoping those are mostly hidden by the landing gear legs. The detailing on the exterior of the gear doors actually looks very, very nice. A final note on the landing gear, there was a large sink mark on the side of the tail wheel in my kit. In step 10, we're adding the final gear doors. We're also building and adding the fuel tank to the aircraft. The fuel tank fit together very nicely, although there are a couple of sink marks that need to be filled on that. And this also fits very nicely underneath the fuselage. In step 11, we're assembling the engine and the cooling fan in front of the engine. I think the engine parts detailed out very nicely, but in all honesty, you could probably paint this entire assembly black because the majority of what's seen is the cooling fan in front of the engine. Here you can see the cooling fan. I have cleaned that up. There was a significant amount of flash around all the blades. I've painted it silver and I've added a wash to bring out some of the detail on that. In step 12, we're building the prop and we're also constructing the engine cowling. This is another area of this kit where I had some issues. The first of which is that the cooling flaps and exhaust needed to be extensively dry fit to the engine cowling to ensure that they had a gap-free fit all the way around. It took me a while to clean these up. The second issue I had was attaching the oil cooler to the underside of the engine cowl. If we look at the notch that is supposed to locate the engine oil cooler, that should be centered on the lower wing, and it's clearly not. It's clearly off to one side. And so after I glued the oil cooler onto the cowl, I actually had to remove that and clean that up. Thankfully, by the time I realized there was a misalignment here, the glue had not fully set, so I was able to pull the engine oil cooler off, and now I can go back and center it on the underside of the engine cowl. The prop assembly itself looks nice. In step 13, we're just adding the engine cowl and the prop to the airframe. I don't anticipate any problems here. In step 14, we're adding the cannon barrels and the pitot tube to the aircraft, and then we're starting to decal the aircraft. There are 3 marking options included in this kit. Thankfully, there are color profile pictures for all 3 marking options, the first of which is on the box top, and the next 2 are on the side of the box. Looking at the decals themselves, these seem to be in register. Unfortunately, mine have started to yellow a little bit. I know it doesn't come through terribly well in the pictures, but all of the white markings on the decal sheet are yellowed, and I'll need to find replacements for these. Otherwise, I think most of the decals are usable. I've used Otaki decals in the past, and I have not had issue with them. In conclusion, when this kit was released in 1973, it was really state of the model maker's art. The detail on the interior, while somewhat cartoonish, will still look good through the cockpit canopy. The fit of the major parts is excellent overall. The surface detailing on the exterior of this kit is very fine. It has very fine engraved panel lines. It has very fine engraved rivet detail, and this will look excellent under a coat of paint. And I would go so far as to say that the exterior surface detailing on this kit is better than any of the newer 1/48 scale Airfix kits that I've built. It's very, very nice. On the downside, there are quite a few ejector pen marks on the smaller parts in this kit. Additionally, the misalignment of the pilot seat and the misalignment of the oil cooler underneath the engine really have me scratching my head, so I'm just not sure what happened there. The extensive amount of dry fitting that I had to do on the engine cooling flaps and exhausts and on the clear parts really elevate this kit from the level of a bare beginner to that of a more intermediate modeler, and the molding glitches in the clear parts themselves are a little bit of a letdown. The Arii J2M3 hails from an era of model kits where the model kits that were before it were honestly much more toy-like. As the 70s went on, models became more and more serious scale replicas of the originals, and I think this kit kind of straddles both eras. If you're looking to build the most accurate J2M3 in 1/48 scale, I would recommend the later Hasegawa J2M3. Detail-wise, this kit is more equivalent to the Tamiya J2M3 that was released around the same time that this one was. I think this Arii kit has the advantage over the Tamiya kit in the area of surface detailing, but I think the Tamiya kit may be more accurate in shape outline. I can highly recommend this kit to intermediate modelers who are looking to improve their modeling skills on a kit that isn't quite shake and bake. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you out there have built the Otaki or Arii J2M3 previously, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.